Good evening and welcome back to The Lens, Women, Art and Revolution. I'm your host, Bogyam, coming to you from SoneFM. It's wonderful to have you join me for our third episode as we continue our journey through the stories of extraordinary women who have shaped the world of art. In our first two episodes, we explored the power and defiance of Artemisia Gentileschi and the passion and resilience of Frida Kahlo. Tonight, we turn to another groundbreaking artist, a woman who carved a name into history, quite literally, through her sculptures. Her name was Edmonia Lewis, and she was the first Black and Native American woman to achieve international fame as a sculptor. Born in a time when racial and gender barriers were nearly insurmountable, Edmonia defied all odds to create breathtaking marble works that spoke of freedom, identity, and resilience. But how did she rise from obscurity to international recognition? How did her art challenge the expectations of her time? And what can we learn from her today? Tonight we will unravel the life, art, and legacy of Edmonia Lewis, diving deep into her struggles, triumphs, and works that made her a legend. Before we begin, let's take a moment to set the tone with music from an African-American composer whose work, like Edmonia's, was shaped by resilience and brilliance. This is Deep River, composed by Samuel Coleridge Taylor and performed by Isaac Perman. Edmonia Lewis was born in 1844, though even her exact birth date remains unclear. She was the daughter of a Haitian father and a Native American mother of the Chippewa people. Her parents died when she was young, and she was raised by her mother's Chippewa relatives, where she learned traditional crafts like beadwork. As a child of both African and Native heritage, Lewis faced double discrimination. Despite this, she dreamed of something greater. Her journey to becoming a sculptor truly began at Oberlin College, one of the first U.S. institutions to admit women and Black students. However, even there, she encountered racism. She was falsely accused of poisoning her white classmates, was severely beaten by a mob, and was ultimately forced to leave the school. But Edmonia did not give up. She moved to Boston, determined to become a sculptor. There she connected with the abolitionist community and found a mentor in Edward Augustus Brackett, a sculptor who helped her refine her craft. She began sculpting busts of prominent abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and John Brown, gaining recognition for her talent. But her ultimate breakthrough came when she decided to leave the United States and move to Rome. Rome was where Edmonia truly flourished, in the heart of neoclassical movement. She worked with some of the greatest sculptors of the time. More importantly, she found freedom. Freedom from racism, freedom to create, and freedom to express the stories that mattered to her. Her relocation to Rome was not just about artistic freedom, it was also a practical decision. At the time, European audiences were more receptive to artists of diverse backgrounds, and Rome was a thriving hub for sculptures, unlike in America, where her race and gender were often obstacles. Italy provided a space where she could focus solely on her craft. She quickly established herself as a respected artist in the expatriate community, working alongside other female sculptors who had also sought refuge in Rome's more inclusive environment. As Edmonia Lewis arrived in Rome, she stepped into a world of artistic freedom. Here she was no longer bound by the racial and gender prejudices that had limited her in America. Instead, she found a space where she could fully embrace her craft. To capture this moment of liberation and triumph, I want to introduce Nessun Dorma from Puccini's Stranded, performed by Luciano Pavarotti. The aria's climactic cry of Vincero, meaning I will win, mirrors Edmonia's perseverance and ultimate success. Let this music transport you to Rome, where she chiseled her legacy into marble. This is Nessun Dorma by Luciano Pavarotti. To understand Edmonia Louisa's art, we need to look at the world she lived in. The mid-19th century was a time of immense change. The American Civil War had just ended, slavery had been abolished, and conversations about race, freedom, and identity were at the forefront of society. In the art world, neoclassicism was the dominant style, inspired by the art of ancient Greece and Rome. Neoclassical sculptures were known for their idealized forms, flowing drapery, and themes of heroism. Edmonia Lewis, however, redefined neoclassicism. She used its traditional forms but infused them with new narratives, ones that centered on Black and Native American stories, something unheard of at the time. Her work was both a continuation of classical tradition and a radical departure from it. She sculpted historical figures, abolitionist themes, and mythological subjects, but she did so on her own terms in a world that barely acknowledged artists like her. Now let's explore some of her most important works and the stories behind them. Before we dive into Edmonia Lewis's powerful sculptures, let's take a moment to reflect with a piece of music that embodies resilience and transformation. This Little Light of Mine by Margaret Bones, rooted in African American history, symbolizes struggle, faith, and freedom, echoing the themes found in Lewis's art. Bones, like Lewis, broke barriers in her field, reshaping classical music with her unique voice. Listen to how the melody rises and falls, much like waves, carrying both pain and triumph. Just as Lewis carved untold stories into marble, Bones weaves history into sound. Now let's immerse ourselves in this moving piece. This is Margaret Bones's This Little Light of Mine, performed by Youngmi Kim. Edmonia Lewis's sculptures are not just pieces of art, they are powerful statements and historical narratives carved in marble, capturing the resilience, struggle, and triumph of the figures she chose to depict. Each piece tells a unique story, one that reflects both the challenges of her time and the perseverance of those who fought against oppression. Her neoclassical approach, infused with deeply personal and political themes, created works that transcend mere aesthetics. Tonight, let us examine some of her most well-known and critically significant sculptures, exploring their artistic merit, historical importance, and the ways in which they challenged social norms of the 19th century. One of Lewis's most well-known and celebrated sculptures, Forever Free, was completed in 1867, 2 years after the Civil War ended and the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. The sculpture presents a striking image of an emancipated Black man standing beside kneeling Black women. The broken chains around their wrists and feet are a direct representation of their newfound freedom, yet their expressions are solemn, not exultant. Unlike other celebratory representations of emancipation, Lewis's sculpture acknowledges the continued uncertainty and struggles that lay ahead for freed African Americans. The positioning of the male figure standing protectively over the kneeling female figure speaks to both resilience and vulnerability. Critics at the time noted that the work carried a deeper message than mere celebration. It was a reflection of the tenuous nature of freedom itself. The realism in their posture and expressions conveyed the reality that the legal abolition of slavery did not mean the immediate revival of justice or equality. Unlike Forever Free, which tackled contemporary issue of freedom and race, The Death of Cleopatra took a historical approach of storytelling. Completed in 1876, this monumental work broke away from the traditionally idealized portrayals of the Egyptian queen. Rather than depicting Cleopatra as a seductress seen in many European interpretations, Lewis sculpted her at the moment of her death, slumped in her throne, her body lifeless, but still regal. This sculpture shocked audiences with its raw realism. European artists often portrayed Cleopatra as a glamorous figure even in death, but Louis chose to emphasize her humanity and strengthen her final act of defiance. The attention to detail, from the intricately carved throne to the lifelike folds of Cleopatra's drapery, demonstrated Louis's technical mastery. The sculpture was displayed at the Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition in 1876, where it attracted considerable attention, both praise and criticism. Many viewed the portrayal as too brutal, too lifelike, but for Louis, the sculpture was a reflection of history as it truly was, rather than an idealized version of it. Inspired by the biblical story of Hagar, an enslaved Egyptian woman who was cast into the wilderness with her son Ismail. Hagar in the wilderness was one of Lewis's most deeply personal works. The biblical narrative of Hagar, a woman cast out into the desert and left to struggle on her own, mirrored Lewis's own experiences as a woman of color navigating the predominantly white and male-dominated world of neoclassical sculpture. Hagar's expression in the sculpture captures her desperation and exhaustion. Yet there is also an unmistakable determination in her stance. The emotional intensity of the piece resonated with many viewers, particularly those familiar with the biblical narrative. The choice to depict Hagar, a woman of African descent, was a direct assertion of Black identity in a time when few works in mainstream art acknowledged Black subjects as worthy of neoclassical representation. A tribute to her Native American heritage, the old arrow maker and his daughter presents an intimate and tender moment between a father and daughter. The father, an aging craftsman, is depicted patiently crafting arrows while his daughter looks on with curiosity. The piece highlights the generational transmission of knowledge and the cultural significance of storytelling and craftsmanship with Native American communities. The softness of their facial expressions and the intricate details in their clothing and tools demonstrate Lewis's careful attention to authenticity. Unlike many neoclassical works, which often portrayed Native Americans in a romanticized or tragic light, Lewis's sculpture offered a more nuanced and dignified portrayal. As we reflect on the powerful themes within Edmonia Lewis's sculptures, freedom, resilience, and identity, I want to introduce a song that echoes these very emotions. The next piece, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, is a traditional African American spiritual performed here by Sarah Vaughan. This song, like Lewis's sculptures, carries the weight of history. Spirituals were born from struggles of enslaved people in America. Songs of sorrow, endurance, and hope. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child speaks to displacement, longing, and the deep pain of separation, emotions that Lois herself may have known as she left America for Rome in search of artistic freedom. Marian Anderson, a groundbreaking Black opera singer, gave this song a new voice, much as Lois gave untold stories a new form in marble. Her performance is haunting, filled with raw emotion, yet it also carries a quiet strength, just as Lewis's sculptures do. As you listen, think about the journey Lewis undertook, the barriers she broke, and the legacy she left behind. This is Marian Anderson's Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, performed by Sarah Vaughan. Edmonia Lewis's work is remarkable not just for its artistic excellence, but also for how it compares and contrasts with the work of her contemporaries. While she was influenced by a neoclassical movement, she diverged from its conventional themes by centering Black and Indigenous subjects. A radical departure from the norm. Tonight we examine how her work stands in relation to 5 other prominent sculptors of her time and beyond. Harriet Hosmer was one of the most prominent female sculptors of the 19th century. Like Lewis, she worked extensively in Rome. Hosmer's work, such as Zenobia in Chains, often depicted strong female figures from history and mythology. However, while Hosmer's subjects were often European heroines, Lewis sought to tell the stories of marginalized communities. Lewis's choice to depict figures like Hagar, Cleopatra, and emancipated African Americans set her apart. While both artists faced gender discrimination, Lewis encountered the additional barrier of racial prejudice. Her success in breaking through these barriers was extraordinary. Rodin, one of the most famous sculptors of the 19th and early 20th centuries, is known for his highly expressive and often fragmented forms, as in The Thinker and The Kiss. While Lewis maintained the precision and structure of neoclassicism, Rodin embraced abstraction and emotion. Where Lewis sought historical and cultural accuracy, Rodin focused on the psychological and the conceptual. Yet both artists shared a commitment to conveying raw human emotion in their works. The death of Cleopatra could be seen as an early precursor to Rodin's willingness to reject idealized forms in favor of expressive realism. Capot, a French sculptor known for his dynamic compositions, often created works that engaged with contemporary social issues, such as why born enslaved like Lewis. He sought to push the boundaries of conventional neoclassicism by depicting subjects with raw emotion and deep social commentary. However, while Capot's works sometimes carried elements of European paternalism in their depictions of black subjects, Lewis's works spoke from an insider's perspective, reclaiming Black and Indigenous narratives with dignity. As we come to the end of this episode of The Lens, Women, Art and Revolution, we step back and reflect on the profound journey of Edmond Lewis, a woman who, against all odds, defied the barriers of race, gender, and class to carve her place in history. Her life was not one of the comfort of privilege, nor was the path paved for her. Instead, she chiseled through adversity with her own hands, sculpting a legacy that continues to inspire artists, historians, and admirers of courage and resilience today. From the small sculptures that first brought her recognition in Boston to the towering death of Cleopatra, she made an incredible mark in a world that was not ready to embrace her fully. Yet her art endures. The stories she told in marble, the pain, the hope, the resistance remain immortal, just as she intended. So what can we learn from Edmond Lewis today? We'll learn that art is a power. It is a voice that cannot be silenced, a form of resistance that transcends time. She showed us that no matter where we come from, no matter the obstacles in our way, we each have the ability to carve out a place for ourselves. We also learn that history remembers those who refuse to be erased. For years, Edmond's name was buried beneath the weight of forgotten history. We come from no matter the obstacles in our way, we each have the ability to carve out a place for ourselves. We also learn that history remembers those who refuse to be erased. For years, Edmond's name was buried beneath the weight of forgotten history. But today she is being rediscovered, studied, and celebrated, not just as an artist, but as a pioneer, a storyteller, and a visionary. Her sculptures stand in museums today as testaments to her brilliance and perseverance. They remind us that art is not just about beauty, it is about truth, identity, and resistance. And so, as we close this episode, I invite you to reflect on her legacy. When we look at her sculptures, we see more than just marble. We see history, struggle, and triumph. And perhaps we also see ourselves, the dreams we carry, the challenges we face, and the art we create in our own lives. As we bring the episodes of The Lens, Women, Art, a Revolution to a close, I want you to leave with a song that embodies the very essence of perseverance, resilience, and hope. Change is gonna come, by Sam Cooke. Written in 1964, this song became an anthem of civil rights movement, echoing the struggles of those who fought for justice and equality. Cooke's heartfelt lyrics that tell the story of hardship, yet within them lies an unwavering belief in a better future. Much like Edmonia Lewis, Cooke was a trailblazer. His voice, like his sculptures, carried the weight of history and the promise of change, just as Lewis defied the odds to create art that spoke of freedom and identity. This song speaks to the enduring fight for progress. As you listen, let the soulful melodies and powerful words remind you that history is shaped by those who refuse to give up. Change is slow, but it always comes. This is a Change is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. And there are 3 more songs left. The song by Sam Cooke also. First, His Wonderful World, and second, Oh My River, and third, You Are Made For Me. Please enjoy.